Well, I'll keep this quick. You can have a surplus of economists. So, hey, yes, there we go. And also, they don't call it the dismal science for nothing. All economics jokes are pretty atrocious. I wanted to start with something that George Osborne is getting quite good at, which is his ability to try and put a brave face on things, because he's rather had to do this pretty much every autumn statement for the last 4 years since he became Chancellor of the Exchequer. And this year I think it's even starting to dawn in a kind of dim way over some of his friends in the media that perhaps everything has not gone quite according to the plan that he said he was going to follow back in June 2010. And the scale of the divergence between what Osborne told us was going to happen over the next few years through his newly created Office for Budget Responsibility and their forecasts, and what has actually happened up to this year is truly something to behold. That Osborne, by this year, due to his austerity programme, the biggest spending cuts in this country for generations, by this year, he said he will be reducing the deficit, the amount the government has to borrow this year, down to £40 billion. The deficit this year is actually going to be £100 billion. And if I can just add to what Romain said, Osborne, over the last 4 years, hasn't just borrowed more than the previous Labour government managed in 2013. He's borrowed more than every single Labour government has ever borrowed in history. That's £517 billion additional borrowing. Now, it takes a certain kind of genius to end up with the biggest programme of spending cuts for a generation, 2 generations in this country, and yet still have, on the other side, borrowing rising and rising again by 10% over this year. The reason it's happened is very simple. He's not getting the taxes in, and he's not getting the taxes in because most of us are facing falling wages for the last 6 years. This has been the longest sustained decline in living standards for most people since records began in 1856. You simply cannot find another period in British history where ordinary people have suffered this long a period of decline in their living standards. And this is the glorious success that George Osborne has presided over. And of course, at the heart of it is exactly what Mick Burt just said. The heart of austerity is a very simple programme. It's a smash and grab raid by the rich on the rest of us. It means the wealth of the richest 1,000 people has doubled in the last 4 years in this country, whilst the rest of us have seen falling living standards, have seen closures of public services, have seen the decline that austerity represents. If Osborne wanted to seriously do something about it, there's 2 things he can stand up and do tomorrow. One, it's very simple. It's start to clamp down on the tax avoidance by the wealthiest, by the big corporations. There is at least £120 billion out there every year that he can get, that he can use to spend on our public services. 2, he can immediately increase the national minimum wage from the derisory sum it is at the moment, nowhere near enough to live on in a place like London, to the living wage, still not exactly riches, but at least enough to get people some degree of dignity when they work. He can do both of these things, and he can start to make a difference to how most of us have to live our lives here. He won't do any of this. He won't do any of this because he's committed to austerity. And that's the politics of this. The politics of this is that this is a smash and grab raid by the rich, and it's up to people like us to stop them doing this, to turn the economy around, to try and have a society that works for the benefit of most people, not the 1%, not their friends, not the bankers, not those at the very top of society. Thank you. Yeah.